Hello, everyone. Good morning and welcome into Big Talk College Sports with a Midwest Perspective, blue collar and blue blood. I am your host, Sam Springer, and as always, joined by Tony Hollinsworth. Tony, happy Thanksgiving, my friend.
Happy Thanksgiving. It was a struggle getting up this morning. I had way too much to eat yesterday, so I was like, I have to get up. Oh no, the biggest struggle of the day, just getting out of bed.
And you know what? I'm not a huge turkey fan outside of this holiday. That is about it. Like I'll have two or three turkey dinners, with family and or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But the rest of the year, I don't eat like fresh roasted turkey. I'll have like a turkey
Oh.
breast or whatever, like sliced cold meat. But straight up turkey, this is it.
See, I'm the opposite because for me, like the lunch meat, like cold turkey, it freaks me out because then I look at regular turkey, I'm like, oh, it cuts like chicken, it has that real fibrous, like stringy texture like chicken, and then I see cold meat, and I'm like, what is this? Just like meat slab?
It's pressed.
It's weird.
No, I don't disagree. But like I'll have that, and to me, the turkey and chicken, they taste exactly the same to me.
Oh yeah.
When it comes to cold meat slices, because you're right, it's the remnants that get pressed into a block and then they get sliced and everything.
Which, fun fact for anybody who doesn't know, that's exactly how that whole imitation crab stuff is made. Is they just press all of it together, which that's awful, by the way. Like, I'm so much of a crab snob. If I go out somewhere, I ask them whenever they make something, do you have fresh crab? They're like, well, it's imitate. I'm not same. That's garbage. Absolutely not. Won't eat it. That's the only time in my life if I have money to eat crab that I'm bougie. I'm like, no. I better get that thing out of the shell. Give me the little crackers. Give me the butter. I'm not eating no imitation crab. I want the crab from the source.
You know what? I just stay away from seafood. How about that?
That's fair. I typically don't eat a lot of seafood anyway. With, like I said, if I do, it's crab, maybe some fish, but otherwise shellfish I typically stay away from.
Yep. Oh, I could talk about food for hours, but I've got a football game tonight. I do broadcasting, and I've talked about that in the past. I do broadcasting. Our high school team is in the state semifinals, so one more win, we go to the state championships. Played at the Football Hall of Fame.
Whoop, whoop, all the way up in Canton, Ohio.
Yeah, Canton, over in Canton.
Canton.
So let's jump into the Big Ten football. A lot going on last week. There weren't a lot of marquee games, but some things happened in those non-marquee games that are of note. But let's start off with the big one, and I have to go ahead and just be admonished because I really thought IU was going to put forward a better showing. Now, it wasn't all doom and gloom. Don't get me wrong; it was 31-15 with just a little bit of time, but Ohio State kind of poured on. I don't care whether you agree with that or not. And I'm not saying you necessarily, Tony.
Right.
But you can think it was wrong, you can think it was fine. I really don't care. I just expected more out of IU the rest of the game, so that touchdown wouldn't have been, well, is that too much? Were they pouring it on?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I will say, I think for a lot of this is where you finally have, because I might be wrong on this, and it's probably too early to say this, but from what the little sample size that we've seen so far from this year, this is when good coaching meets good coaching. And then whenever you look down on the actual paper, the statistical sheet, what is the talent versus talent level? And this
the Jimmies and Joes were in Columbus's side there.
Correct. So it was one of those that I don't think this was any slight to Coach Signetti. I don't think it's any slight to Ryan Day. It was just a matter of, at the end of the day, you have to look at the talent that Ohio State had that they brought back from last year. Majority of the defense, you still had Emeka Ibuka come back, Travion Henderson. And then a lot of people talk about how they quote unquote bought the roster. Well, they bought a lot of guys that are already there. And then they supplemented through the transfer portal with, Judkins, with Caleb Downs, with McLaughlin, the center, who's unfortunately out, with Will Howard. So it's not like they went out and bought everybody, the best players in the transfer portal. They just supplemented in key positions that they needed. This was one of those, and you and I kind of talked about it. We thought it maybe might be closer, but we also, at the end of the day, both of us, I think, kind of had the idea this is a very realization that IU was probably going to lose this game.
For sure.
Because if this was a game that's going to lose, it was going to be this one, because at the end of the day, it is still Ohio State. You get all the 4 and 5 stars that are recruited there.
Mhm.
You look at the overall talent. That's why they are still considered one of the top rosters and one of the best teams in the country, is because of who they have currently. And many of the Buckeye fans maybe would argue as far as the coaching side, because he hasn't beaten Michigan in 3 years, and that's the most important thing. There's 2 important things if you become the head coach in Columbus. You need to win a national championship. That's number 2. Number 1, you have to beat Michigan. If you don't win a national title, that's fine. As long as you beat Michigan, it's all that matters.
In all
So,
fairness, he has beaten Michigan. He just hasn't beaten them more than he's lost.
correct. Because I mean, he beat them in 2019? Because he took over in mid 2018 into 2019.
Sure. I think so. Yes.
And then they didn't face in 2020 because of COVID, and then he's lost 3 straight. So I mean, yeah, he has beaten them, just not a lot.
Hey, when you only give a vague generals, he could say, "Hey, look, I've beaten Michigan. I didn't go 0 for like their coach did prior to them winning 3 in a row against us."
Right.
You know, what was it? 0 for 8 going up to that point. But honestly, I think this cements me in thinking that Ohio State is the number 2 team in the country. I think they strongly should be the number 5 seed once the final bracket comes out, because let's say it this way: whoever wins that game should be the 1 seed, the Oregon, Ohio State. And I'm going to just say it's a foregone conclusion. Shame on me for doing that, but Ohio State wins, they're in the Big Ten championship. That's the only thing they have to do to get in. IU needs a Penn State loss and an Ohio State loss. Penn State needs an Ohio State loss and a win against whoever they play. It's not Minnesota. That's who they played last week.
They play Maryland.
Okay, Maryland. So they need to beat Maryland, and Ohio State needs to lose to Michigan. Correct. So there are a lot of scenarios. There are only 3 scenarios of who goes to play Oregon. But I think whoever wins that championship, and I assume it's going to be Ohio State, whoever wins that Big Ten championship should be the number 1 seed. Yeah. Because if it's Oregon, hey, look, we've beaten Boise State, we've beaten everybody on our schedule, and oh, by the way, we've beaten Ohio State twice. Ohio State wins, it's, hey, look, we've lost 1 game only, and it was 1 point in Eugene to Oregon.
Yeah, but then if they beat them at a neutral location, okay, hey, now we beat them this time. We're 1-1 on the season against them. And, to much to their credit, they're probably still the number 2 seed going in there. They beat the 1 seed. Okay, now we have a win against the number 1 team in the country. They have a loss to us. We have a loss to them. Kind of cancels each other out. But then Ohio State would be the Big Ten champion, so more than likely they would more than likely keep the 1 seed.
Well, I think they get the 1 seed, then, the other 3, that get the buys. Then I think Oregon or Ohio State, whoever loses that Big Ten championship, slot them in at the 5. They're that good. They're both really that good.
Maybe you want to know what I could honestly see?
Don't tell me Notre Dame.
I think it might be, and I only say that because the argument is going to be brought up is because the College Football Playoff Committee makes 0 sense whenever they make their selection. Their argument would be, well, they don't have another loss like Ohio State potentially does. So I could see them making. If Ohio State
has 2 losses, they're both to Oregon. Notre Dame has Northern Illinois. End of discussion. Both of those losses are 10 times better than the loss that Notre Dame has.
Hey, you're speaking like a true college football fan. I need you to throw that logic out as a college football playoff committee member.
Like a pollster.
Because their argument's going to be, well, they didn't lose. They lost Northern Illinois, but they won every game. But they didn't have to play a conference championship game.
It doesn't matter. It does not matter. And yeah, I agree. If you lose in your conference championship, that loss should not hurt you.
And
in any way.
I heard rumors that supposedly in future talks. I don't know when they might implement that, but there is talks that if you lose in your conference championship game, that will not affect you moving forward. I don't know I don't know how they will do that, because to me, that is so integral and so ingrained now because of moments like Ohio State versus Oregon right now, because that could determine if, hey, if we play in a championship game and Ohio State wins, that could put them at the 1 seed, and that could knock Oregon down to the 5 or 6 seed. And then what do they do? Whereas if, Oregon loses and, oh, well, Oregon's still the 1 seed, Ohio State is going to be pretty salty about that. And
the only thing that that a loss in your championship game should affect is whether or not you get a bye in that first round. That's the only thing, because if you lose, you're not the conference champion. That's
right.
The only thing it's keeping. It doesn't. Oh wow, USC. Sorry, you're in the top 4, but you lost in your conference championship. Oh hey, by the way, now you're no longer in the playoff. No, no, that's not the way it should happen.
I don't know if it would ever be that extreme.
It's been that extreme. That's what they did to USC a couple years ago.
True, and I might be, I might be reaching a little bit with this, because again, I'm trying to somewhat give the CFP committee a little bit of intelligence.
I wouldn't give them credit.
May or may not have.
Don't give them credit,
because you know what would probably happen is this would probably happen, and there's a lot of talks about it right now, that a 3-loss SEC team could get in because of that. Because their argument, well, they're the runner up for the SEC. That's a major conference. Like,
doesn't matter,
because, well, like they've kind of talked about, and this may be spiraling off a little bit. They focus a lot on the whole, who did you lose to, and do you have a quality loss thing? And it's funny because now it's biting in the butt with Bama, because you've lost to unranked Vandy, you lost to an abysmal Oklahoma team that has been
and got
the worst team in the SEC, and you got housed. Your only good quote unquote quality loss is to Tennessee, and they would make an argument, because you're gonna be like, well, Alabama's best team in the country. They beat Georgia. They beat they beat LSU when LSU was still barely ranked.
You have a good win. Good on you.
I'm just telling you that would be the argument that would be made, is because you notice they kind of rank the conferences differently. Like the Big Ten, the SEC is going to be there. The ACC, now you get 1 team, maybe 2, because you got Miami and SMU right now at the ACC. And there was even talks about that on Joel Klatt's show of Alabama could potentially get in if they win out, if South Carolina beats Clemson, if Texas beats Texas A&M, and either Miami or SMU has to lose another game, that could be Alabama's path to the playoff, which should be insane.
There is zero reason to put a 3-loss team in. Zero. Correct. I don't care if they are the best team. Don't lose 3 games. Don't lose 3 games. You're not the best if you've lost 3 games.
And not only that, but to throw their argument of quality losses back at them, don't let 2 of those 3 losses be to unranked team. One that has historically always been the bottom feeder of the SEC, and one who has been the bottom feeder of the SEC.
They make bad jokes about Vanderbilt being in the SEC.
Nick Saban said, and I quote, "Not a hard place to play because they don't have a lot of fans there. Super easy to win in Vanderbilt."
And then they summarily went and got beat.
Housed.
It just no, at this point in this juncture, there should be absolutely no reason a 3-loss team should be in the playoff. There are way more teams in the top 25 that have less than 3 losses that, to me, have more of an argument to the CFP. This is what would really anger me. Let's say IU struggles against Purdue for a half and only wins by 17. Okay. They win by 17. They finish 11-1. You gonna tell me that, whoa, you didn't beat the one team that we gave you on your schedule? They damn IU about their schedule. They didn't make the schedule. The only thing they did was put the 3 on the schedule prior to the conference.
Yep.
They can't control that they didn't play Oregon. They can't control that they didn't play Penn State. They played the schedule in front of them, and they will have gone 11-1. If they put a 3-loss team in front of them and go to the playoff, they need to just stop college football. Period.
Well,
Period.
And here's the funny thing that I've seen a lot of people do comparisons to too, is you look on the other side at Penn State, almost the exact same schedule, because the only real powerhouse that Penn State has beat as far as or lost to, because they've played honestly a bunch of nobodies as far as ranking or power wise. They lost to Ohio State by 7.
There's nobody questioning them as much.
Correct. But they would question IU. And again, don't get me wrong. I don't think that IU is going to go in here and absolutely, blow out whoever they face in the first round.
Cincinnati didn't 3 years ago either.
Correct. But like you said, they're 11-1. Their only loss is to the number 2 seed in the country. And that's the exact same argument they're making for Penn State. And they're ranked 4th in the country right now because they lost to the number 2 team in the country.
And I'm kind of curious as to how IU drops to 10th in the polls.
Oh, yeah.
And they lost to the number 2 team in the country while being ranked number 5.
Correct.
Penn State lost to the number 3 team in the country at the time that they were number 4 and dropped to 6.
Mm-hmm. And then
they both lost in Columbus. No, don't get me wrong. Ohio State beat IU by more.
Correct.
A loss is a loss is a loss to me. I don't think that warranted a 5-spot drop, especially with the atrocity that the whole top 20 went through last week.
Well, and then you notice too, Penn State was able to wiggle their way back up to 4 even after that loss. And again,
they back up there.
And they didn't beat anybody of significance. They struggled against Minnesota this past week.
Let's talk about that. A 26-25 win as the Nittany Lions go to Minneapolis and pull out. I listened to about 3/4 of that last half, and that was an interesting finish because Penn State trailed for the better part of the first half. Actually trailed at the half by 3. And struggled to get back into it. Minnesota can't quite pull it together, and they fall short. But the Nittany Lions, 10-1, like you said, 10-1, 7-1 overall in the Big Ten, and they don't have a quality win just like IU doesn't.
Yep,
they have a quality loss.
They do. Which again, I hate that phrase so much because like you said, a loss is a loss is a loss, and I feel like that's what people try to make the argument with, especially with the SEC when they talk about, oh, well, the Big Ten isn't as good. If you put, I had somebody legitimately make the argument that if you put South Carolina this year in the Big Ten, that they would be probably number 3 in the Big Ten because you've got Oregon and Ohio State at 1 and 2, but they would run through everybody else. I'm like,
what this is, right?
Oh yeah, it's money.
No.
Hey, the world's smallest violin.
World's smallest violin playing for his bleeding heart. I don't care.
Right.
11-1 is 11-1. Okay.
You beat who you're supposed to beat. And there's a lot of people who made that argument.
I have heard few saying that Penn State doesn't belong in the playoff. Few.
Right.
Their best win right now is, if you want to go ranking wise, number 19 Illinois, 21-7 win. They also did win in Wisconsin by 15, and that's it.
Yeah,
they beat USC. They struggled to beat USC.
They had to do a comeback against USC.
To beat them. And Bowling Green had them on the ropes for the longest time. And this is the start of the season. I usually give teams a pass from the start, but Penn State hasn't done a ton to really get me to say, okay, let's forget about that Bowling Green.
Right.
Oregon struggled with Idaho. Or Idaho State, whoever they played.
Idaho State, yeah.
I give them a pass. Dylan Gabriel was learning a system, first game in pads against somebody of a different laundry, and it's an adjustment. So they struggled for a little bit, 1 by 2 possessions. They struggled against Boise State. Well, Boise State is going to be the 4 seed probably. So that's a really good struggle win.
Yes.
But Bowling Green should not have had Penn State on the ropes. They did. I was willing to give them a pass until I saw the rest of their season. They haven't done much.
No, you got a 3-point comeback win against USC in Los Angeles.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, you pummeled Washington. That's about your only
You
team
should
you've
have.
faced so far that has a
Should have.
winning record other than Illinois. And then you had to do a comeback win, 1-point win against Minnesota of all teams. And I know we talked about this just before the show started. I want your opinion on it. Of, do you think it's time? And this is going to sound crazy, but we've heard a lot of Ohio State fans make the same case for Ryan Day. Do you think it's time that Penn State moves on from James Franklin? Because, I mean, you think about it. Yes, he's beating teams that he should beat, but you're also just barely beating teams that you should beat. And you have, what, I think 3 wins against Michigan total in your career, which is fine, but you have more losses than you do wins against them. And you've only ever beaten Ohio State once. And that was in 2017, if I remember correctly.
I don't think so, because who are you going to get? Now, are there people that would leave a lower rung program to come to Penn State? Sure.
100%.
But is there a huge, like, oh my gosh, this guy is a can't miss. Somebody's got to hire him quickly.
Right. Well, here would be my potential other argument.
Cignetti is not the one.
No, I wouldn't say Coach Cignetti. Maybe you don't necessarily poach from lower, but do you try to, poach horizontally? Do you try to poach
Ryan
somebody
Walters?
that you say, no? We said not lower. Honestly, and it might be like a step lower, but who's to say you don't pitch the idea of PJ Fleck? Because you've seen him be able to do quality wins in Minnesota. Again, he's not doing anything crazy, because at the end of the day, it's Minneapolis. They don't have a lot of boosters. They're not a massive college football brand. It would be a night and day difference from the talent and quality he would have at Penn State than he would at Minnesota. And it's a huge brand with a ton of boosters, ton of NFL alumni. You have access to so much stuff if you did. I don't know if they would, because like you said, there's not really a name out there, unless you're trying to pull like Nick Saban out of retirement, that I would say would make an immediate impact. But to me, there does come a point. Does Penn State eventually say, look, you're really good, but it doesn't seem as if you can get us over the hump, and that's what we need right now?
Well, in all fairness, we haven't seen a 12-team playoff yet.
Correct.
And you never know. Maybe they are built for a playoff. That was the big knock on Ryan Day for the longest time, is he can't beat Michigan. But do you want Michigan, or do you want a national title? He was gearing to try to make a run for a national title, and still being told he needed to gear for Michigan.
Right.
So you're trying in mid-drive to yank it over and beat Michigan. Well, but when you stumble against them, you try to correct it
and go back to what you were doing before. Yeah.
So you never know. I mean, we haven't seen it. Penn State's never gotten the opportunity to be in the playoff yet.
Right.
Now we're getting to an expanded playoff where they're not even being questioned. And did you see the projection of who they would play in the first round of the playoff?
They'd host IU. And then, well, here's where I think it would be interesting, though, because let's say hypothetically everything stays the exact same that it is. So Boise State's the 4, Oregon's the 1, Miami's the 3, Texas is the 2. They would then travel to Miami, which I think would be a really interesting game to watch that happen. But I also feel like realistically, if you're struggling against teams like Minnesota, USC, and you're beating up against the bad teams that you should, I think it's going to be the Ohio State game, but worse, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it's very possible. It'd be interesting. I don't know that I would say I would be 100% on board with getting rid of James Franklin, because you suggest a change, but who are you changing it with? That's the big thing. Is have a solution. Don't cause a bigger problem by not having the solution with that. But let's move on. A couple of games last week. We talked a really long time about a plethora of different stuff there, but all stemming from 2 games that we've talked about. But the other 2 that I wanted to talk about, Nebraska hosts Wisconsin. You and I both kind of talked about this, weren't too sure that this was the convincing. We weren't convinced this was the week. We kept talking about next week or this week, this coming week being the one where Nebraska might be able to get bowl eligible, but they beat the Badgers by 19, 44-25. That to me that was my surprise of the week. Was the fact that Dylan Raiola threw for 293 yards, 1 touchdown. Emmett Johnson had 16 carries and 113 runs, but Dante Dowdell had 3 touchdowns running on the day to help the Badgers or to help the Huskers get bowl eligible for the first time since 2015.
Yeah. And seriously puts a damper on Wisconsin's streak they have. Longest streak in college football, for anybody that wants to know. Fun fact. They have gone 23 seasons of bowling eligibility, and right now they're sitting at 5-6. They have to win their very last game to be 6-6 and go bowling for a potential 24th year in a row.
I believe that's
Nebraska
against Minnesota, isn't it?
I believe so, yes. So that might be in jeopardy. Nebraska might have potentially foiled that.
So how
well,
quickly,
at least started to foil that.
Or Fire Fickle, hashtag Fire Fickle is it if that happens? Have they bought into the process of Luke Fickell?
I don't know if they have. I think that they still need to give him a shot because he's 2 years in now.
This is his second year. Well, his 2 years and 1 bowl game.
Right.
Because he coached the bowl game the year before when he got hired.
Yeah, that's true. And yeah, they host Minnesota tomorrow on today actually. Today at 12 noon.
Yeah.
So
it's a screwy holiday schedule.
I know this whole Black Friday thing's messed me up. And I'm not even going out to buy anything. I think there are going to be people that are making the argument, but you went from a coach that realistically, like Paul Chryst was a very good coach. Like Wisconsin was always 9-3, 10-2.
So
you fired him in the middle of the season, which was weird. And you bring in a guy that's totally new. He's coming back to the Power 5, coming back to the Big Ten Conference and whatnot. And you're only giving him, not even 2 full seasons to try to build his culture, build his team. You're having to play. Honestly, he's having to play quarterback roulette because, Graham Mertz leaves. He brings in, Locke, if I remember right? Locke. Locke in at quarterback. He actually had, Van Dyke from Miami who gets hurt in the Alabama game. So you're really going with your backup quarterback that you've got who's playing, fairly decent. I mean, you're sitting here at 5-6. You're not awful.
Right.
It's just, I think he needs to probably work on a lot of his recruiting efforts? Yeah, because Wisconsin is still a pretty big brand. And for the most part, historically, they've been able to get a lot of really good players there in Wisconsin. So I don't know if you fire him is necessarily the big thing. And it's funny because people
looms though with the same with him as Franklin. Who are you going to replace him with?
Right. And that would be my thing is, I know I said that about Franklin. Right. Ooh. And say Wisconsin would be coming back pretty well. I don't know how Penn State would do with Luke Fickell, though.
Maybe he would do better.
Maybe. But yeah, but to me, it's like Franklin, we've had you have a massive size of, hey, this is what he's done. This is what he's accomplished. This is what he hasn't accomplished. With Luke Fickell, it's like, okay, you saw what he did with, at the time, a group of 5 school in Cincinnati. Now a Power 5 school, which is great. He basically built them to get to that point. Power 4. Sorry. Hey, the Pac-12 is still Power 5 officially on the books. Okay. Even though they're not recognized, they're still Power 5, sir. Don't you dismiss the Pac-12. The Pac is coming back. Okay. They just need one.
Their conference champion had a losing record this year.
Oregon State. Go Beavs.
I don't call them very power.
Go Beavs. Anyway.
They beat Washington State. That's the one conference game they had to play.
It's true. Hey, Pac-12 champions, go Beavs. But nonetheless, though, I don't necessarily know if firing him would be the right move. You haven't given him enough time. I would say at minimum, give him 4 years. Give him a chance to recruit players that potentially coming in as freshmen. Now they're coming into their junior, maybe in their senior year. See what he can do. And if there's nothing at that point, then move on. But much to your point,
guarantee you, if they miss the bowl season this year and they go bowl eligible next year, they will be looking for a new coach.
Probably, but much to your point, who are you going to get though? Because right now, nobody.
We also know people are irrational when they're in that situation too.
Correct. Because all honesty, there's no, at least for me, and I don't know how you feel about it. For me, from what I've watched this season, there's not a single offensive coordinator or defensive coordinator that has just made strides with a team that says, "Wow, that is one of the best offenses I've seen in the country.
Yeah.
Wow, that's one of the best defense." Maybe people try to make the reach and say, "Oh, well, you could pull Chip Kelly." Does Chip Kelly want to go there and potentially be the head coach? Maybe. I don't know. But from what we've seen with what he did with UCLA, I don't think that's an upgrade for.
I think Chip Kelly knew he didn't want to start a new conference with the team that he had at UCLA. I think he wants. I mean, he was a good coach in Oregon. He was a decent coach in Philadelphia for the Eagles. He wasn't a dumpster fire of a coach in San Francisco, but and then when he went to UCLA, he knew what he was coming into this year, so that's why he went to be an OC rather than a head coach.
Right.
I don't know if it's his dream job to end his career as an OC.
I don't either.
I honestly wouldn't be surprised if something like that were to happen. I'm not even going to go out on a limb and say, yeah, I think he's going to go to X university. I just think when he's gotten to the point in his career that he's like, okay, I can make that decision. Yes, I'm leaving for that one.
Well, and you could even look back at when people first asked him, why did you go from being a head coach to you voluntarily chose to go back to being an offensive coordinator. And, if you mentioned, he's like, hey, I wanted to have fun, being a coach of football again. And for being a head coach, you have to answer for absolutely everything. It's like, well, why not I be the offensive coordinator for a team that is winning, that historically
has a really good offense already.
Correct. So it's like, yeah, why not make my job 1,000 times easier and just go there, have fun, let Ryan Day take the heat on stuff.
Yep.
And who knows, maybe, and this is probably an even more far-fetched stretch, but let's say hypothetically, Oregon, Ohio State does lose to Michigan for a fourth time. Ryan Day is probably a 99% chance you're fired,
which is stupid. But you have a head coach in your OC,
and you can just move him on up to be the next head coach of the Ohio State Buckeyes. To the east side.
Yeah, I don't disagree. It'll be just Wisconsin having a 5-6 record doesn't. It is a foreign thing.
Mm-hmm.
Although I'm old enough to remember when Wisconsin was as good as Purdue was back in the 80s. And that wasn't very good at all.
I was like, that's not very good.
But let's move to the final one from last week. We're still on last week. Let's make this a really quick one. USC gets bowl eligible with a 19-13 win over UCLA. UCLA will not be going bowling unless, I don't know,
somebody just opts out, basically.
A 5-6 team or a 4-7 team go to a bowl or whatever. But UCLA, not a horrible season in the eyes of what they were prognosticated to have, but USC gets bowl eligible.
They do. I don't think it's necessarily a surprise. I think it's one of those we didn't, or at least me personally, I didn't really know what to expect at a USC post Caleb Williams with Lincoln Riley with a new defensive coordinator. So kind of a surprise that they are able to go bowl eligible, especially with how they started out with in the Big Ten. I mean, they've been able to beat a lot of their old Pac-12 opponents, but Big Ten wise, there's still a lot of work that Lincoln Riley needs to do for the near future.
Yeah, I think it does them the good to be able to still have that practice time and maybe get back into get some of those younger kids some practice time, because they're going to be opt-outs, transfers, and stuff. So that roster now isn't going to look like the roster that's there for the Sun Bowl or whatever it is that they end up doing, the Las Vegas Bowl, whatever. But so it's not going to be the most. But it gives them that 2 to 3 weeks of extra practice, or a couple of weeks at least of extra practice, to be able to, kind of develop those players. So good on them to get bowl eligible. Good on Nebraska to get bowl eligible. Purdue put up a big fight against Michigan State last Friday. Whoop, whoop. That's about all I can say about that. But let's move to this week. It's rivalry week for most The USC UCLA matchup is a Pac-12 rivalry, but it's not USC's biggest rivalry. Let's start with that one. We've got number 5 Notre Dame traveling out to the LA Memorial Coliseum to take on the Trojans. 3:30 kickoff tomorrow afternoon again on CBS.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any chance USC has against the Irish?
No. Even, I mean, they're 7.5-point favorites according to the odds by ESPN Bet. They're 7.5, and the over/under is 51.5. I still think USC's defense needs a lot of work. I think there's that freshman quarterback that they have that I'm not even going to try to enunciate his last name because I know I'm going to butcher it. I'm going to listen to it tomorrow, and I'm going to make sure that I hear it and I know.
I think it's either May or Mayava,
probably. But I think just for how is he going to do against this Notre Dame defense? Well, albeit they've lost a lot of people just due to injuries, this is still a pretty well coached, well run Notre Dame team. Now, I still have a lot of questions about Riley Leonard at quarterback, just mainly because he likes to run the ball more than he likes to throw it.
It's funny, but it's a quarterback.
Right. But mainly just, I mean, Notre Dame's on an absolute roll. They crushed Army, which we kind of expected. Again, USC has kind of had kind of an off year so far, and they've struggled against Notre Dame. Heck, Notre Dame is really the team that you could say broke Caleb Williams last year and caused USC to go on their downward spiral. So I don't think
because they played in the weird, like in the middle of the season last year.
It was I was like, wait, and it was like when I went back and thought about it, I was like, they're playing them in the middle of the season. They're playing them in the and they're playing them at the end of the year now.
Well, they almost always would play them, traditionally almost always be close to the end of like November, late November or middle November, and maybe not the last, but like last year it was like October something. Like, come on, seriously?
It was early in the season,
and I guess they have those anomalies because if you remember the tush push. The Matt Leinart pushing Reggie Bush into the end zone in South Bend. I believe that was in early October, if not a couple of weeks into October. But for the most part, it's normally a November game, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's usually, again, but I feel like I've also seen it like it's almost like they rotated. I think I've seen it at the beginning of the season before. Maybe if it's more of a marquee matchup. We saw it last year where it was more in the middle, and then this year maybe it's like, we don't expect to be that good. We'll just put it as the last game of the season.
It might be the Big Ten may say, look, you either play them at the beginning or at the end. That's your choice. You don't get the middle.
You mean the Big Ten contract flex thing that we talked about, many, many moons ago about this is finally coming into play? So maybe Notre Dame should just go ahead and join.
I think it's a matter of time before they there's going to be a push for more conference games. There just is going to be. Because IU is making an example of why you need to have more of a big conference season, because then you get more potential to get those big dogs into everybody's schedule. If you're not one of them, you're playing them. There's a good chance you're playing them. If you can get 10 or 11 conference games out of 12 to 13 and say, look, you get one.
Yeah.
I guarantee you USC is not going to hold on to Notre Dame.
No. And I'll be honest too, I think, even though I've seen a lot of people make the argument that Notre Dame is going to want to stay independent because they have control over everything, I think all it's going to take is 1 to 2 years of this 12-team playoff format and Notre Dame having to do a road game every single time. Well, if they're as high as the 5th seed, they would technically host one. But I think all it's going to take is for them to have to go on the road every single time. And they're eventually going to be like, we're tired of this. Yeah, we're getting tired of this.
They will,
and I guarantee they're going to want
every year.
Yeah,
and I think that eventually it's going to get harder and harder to schedule quality opponents.
Yep.
It's going to get very hard because you're going to see these cutthroat, campaigns. Of trying to get everybody, we played so-and-so. Yes, we lost to these guys, but we also beat these guys, and these guys. nobody wants to throw Notre Dame as an extra in there.
Right.
So you're going to get the group of fives, you're going to get the Marshalls, you're going to get the Northern Illinois, because Notre Dame still draws.
Mm-hmm.
But at what point does Notre Dame become the Navy of yesterday?
Right.
And I don't know that they're too far from it.
Yeah. And eventually too, I think what's going to come back, it's going to have the same issue that is happening right now with IU and Penn State of who have you really beat, and then who is your losses to? You lost to Northern Illinois. Oh, well, we beat Navy when they were ranked. Okay, cool. Navy has since fallen off the map. Oh, hey, we beat a 19th ranked Army. Okay, cool. They literally just run the triple option. They run the ball like 6,000 times a game.
Dame.
You should. You can literally do what they can and throw the ball. You should beat Army. Like you're not going to be able to make an argument of we deserve to be in the playoffs because we beat the AAC and we beat the Mountain West. Like no,
They
and eventually
beat Texas A&M. That is, and they beat Louisville.
They're both quality.
Those are both decent quality.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have number 24 Navy and number 19 Army. Now, number 19 Army is higher than what Texas A&M was at the time that they beat Texas A&M, but Texas A&M is markedly better now, too.
Correct. And you beat them in Kyle Field.
Yeah, that you beat them at A&M.
Yeah,
you beat Louisville at home, but they were number 15. You struggled against them, only beat them by 7, but you got the victory. And so, like, they're not a dumpster fire. I'm not saying they're garbage, but
no.
Eventually, Stanford's not going to matter. You beat Stanford. That ain't the Christian McCaffrey Stanford Cardinal. I don't know who it is now.
I don't.
The laundry's the same. The players. You beat Florida State 52-3. Woo! They're 1-9.
They say, hey, they're 2-9. They got their second win last week.
They're 2-9. So your schedule is not that impressive. And it's not going to get any more impressive, I don't think. I really don't think it's going to get much more impressive as we go down this trip or down this road, because you're going to have people complaining when IU gets into the playoff this year. When they get in, there will be people throwing fits because why didn't LSU make it? LSU has 3 quality losses. We complained about that wonderful term. They've got 3 quality losses. IU doesn't even have a quality win, and they've got 1 loss against the one team that was any good, blah, 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 blah. The disparity and the unbalanced schedule is unheard of. Well, then the Big Ten's going to say, well, why would we do anything different? Well, then all of a sudden you're going to get the committee saying, yeah, we're going to actually kind of not discriminate, but you know what I mean? We're going to put you in a different category if your competitors or your top ranked people haven't played all the good teams. If they haven't, they're going to get less weighted as a positive for their record. It's gonna happen. I don't know how I can explain that I'm so sure that this will happen. I really can't explain why I'm so sure of it. It's going to happen, because when you're only playing less than half of your conference, you're going to get things like this happening.
Yep. And I say, and they're going to be even bigger problems when it's not a matter if, it's when the ACC potentially dissolves. Now what? Now who you going to go beat up? You going to go beat up the ACC? Okay, cool.
Because half those teams are going to be in the Big Ten and half those teams are going to be in the SEC. And the SEC, once those conferences get bigger, they're definitely not going to let too many go out of conference schedule.
Correct.
They're going to broaden their conference schedule and say, we're playing an 11 game conference schedule. You get 1.
Yep. And honestly, whoever doesn't go into the SEC or Big Ten is probably going to go in the Big 12, and that means the Big 12 is going to get even bigger, and they're probably going to make that same argument.
Same thing.
So,
yep.
Have fun.
Let's go to the last Nebraska, Iowa. Had Nebraska lost to Wisconsin, that would be a game of significance. But honestly, that's tonight at 7:30 on NBC. But let's talk about the game. Michigan Wolverines travel to Columbus to the Horseshoe, take on the number 2 Ohio State Buckeyes. 12 o'clock kick noon. 12 o'clock noon kick on Fox. Ohio State, a 20-point favorite. Is that appropriate?
I think so. I think if you look at Michigan this season, it has been an absolute dumpster fire for them. Quarterback wise, they have a lot of work they need. Albeit they did manage to steal Bryce Underwood from LSU, which I've heard rumors, and I saw a report that apparently it was a mixture of Tom Brady meddled his little deflating fingers in there, and then on top of $12 million of money to Bryce Underwood as well to get him to make that commitment. On top of it, too, Michigan's had a lot of injuries. I think they're still going to be out of the top defensive back of Will Johnson. I feel like Donovan Edwards has been a real disappointment for them this season.
I don't think it's of his doing, though, either.
I don't either. But on the other hand, you've got Mullings, who has 832 yards and 11 touchdowns this season. I mean, he's been one of their few bright spots is him in Khalil Mullings. So I think it's appropriate. This is going to be a massive revenge game for Ohio State. Almost everything says that Ohio State should win. Even on the ESPN predictor, I think they are like a 92% favorite to win this game. So barring, and Khalil Mullings is a senior, so never mind. Michigan's one bright spot at running back is gone after this game.
They'll
so
play one more game. Come on.
Can play a bowl game. But no, I think this is very much appropriate. I mean, this is a huge revenge game for Ohio State. It's in Columbus. That energy is going to be there. That crowd is 100% going to be in it, and it's one of those. It's not a matter of if, it's when it happens.
Yeah, I don't have any doubt that Ohio State is the better team on the field tomorrow. I honestly don't know that that's enough. I think Ohio State's 4 scores better, easy, better than Michigan. That's not saying that I hate yeah, it is. No, it's just this is exactly the season I envisioned with Michigan this year. Yeah. It really is. I didn't see the loss to Washington coming in it. I thought they'd be 7-4 going into this and making it 7-5. They're going to end up 6-6 if they do indeed lose this game. And there is nothing Wolverine fans can do to argue that it should have gone differently. They earned their 6-6 record if they do indeed finish at 6-6. But I think Ohio State wins, goes to the Big Ten championship next week. We'll talk about that when we get to it too.
Yeah, and I agree. I like I said, at the beginning of the year, I only had Michigan losing 3 games. I thought they were only going to lose to Texas. I thought they were going to lose to Oregon, and then I picked them to lose this game. But you lose to IU, you lose to Illinois, you lose to Washington. The Washington and Illinois are both pretty embarrassing because you lost 10 points to Washington, then you lost by 14 to Illinois.
Illinois is not a bad team, though, in fairness, though, either.
No, but, I mean, you still...
23rd in this fine land, Tony.
Yeah, but, I mean, you still got thumped. And you got thumped on the road.
Yeah.
And, I mean, you realistically, yes, you beat Michigan State, but, watching a lot of that game, it was more Michigan State hurting themselves than you guys being the better team. So this is 100%. I think what a lot was to be expected out of a team that was won the national title but lost a ton of coaches, lost a ton of players, all the changeover and whatnot. So I could 100% see Ohio State dropping. I wouldn't be surprised if Ohio State drops 42 on them tomorrow. Not saying they're going to win by 42, but I'm going to see them dropping.
I wouldn't be shocked to see them win by 42. The one last game that we'll talk about before we get going, Michigan State hosts Rutgers. That's a 3:30 kick on Fox Sports 1, FS1. If Michigan State beats the Scarlet Knights, They will be bowl eligible. To me, that is a huge turnaround from last year's Spartan team. Aiden Childs, the quarterback for Michigan State, still really young, still learning, but showing really big bright spots for the Spartans in year one of the Jonathan Smith era.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I really don't know what to make of this game because I feel like it could go either way. And I feel like Rutgers is honestly really salty about last week's game when they they took a timeout and Illinois
on the
said,
field
you know
goal and then turned into a touchdown.
at the
Illinois,
very end. Yeah, it's like Rutgers is like, okay, we can't do this again. So Rutgers might come in a little bit more fired up for that one.
You gave Bielema more time to think about it, and he went for it on fourth, and they scored. Come on.
Because, I mean, honestly, if you're Brett Bielema at that point, it's like, why not? If I don't get it, I still lose regardless. So why not go for it?
Well, he would have still been tied.
Yeah.
Like he didn't, it was a tie ball game. He was going for the win on the kick, but you know what? That's off a fart kick. We saw the example. Yeah, you know what? Let's just go for it. Let's get the first down. And they did.
And they did. And more. So, yeah.
I honestly could see Rutgers winning this by 3 scores, but I could also see Michigan State winning by field goal. The problem with Michigan State is they've got to cure their get to the red zone, then stall out method.
Yes.
They have way too much to where, they do that way too much. Their kicker is amazing.
Yeah.
But you don't want that 5 times in the red zone either, though.
Right. They say, yeah, you got down to the red zone 5 times. That's great, but you came away with 15 points. Not bueno. Right. Not bueno.
No bueno. Mister.
No bueno. No bueno.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting. That'll be a game I will at least pay attention to. Then you have the bucket game.
I was going to ask, we can't forget about your game, the bucket game. This is the big game for you.
I would not be shocked to see Purdue hang around this, like I said, for at least a half and make it interesting. But the way that it's worked with Purdue is A, they're not good, and then B, when they do play well, they end up doing something to shoot themselves in the foot and lose it. That is their MO the whole season.
And I don't know if you saw the betting, but the betting is Indiana by 29.
Yeah. The minus 29 for IU. And the over-under is at 56.5, so they really don't expect Purdue to do much offensively.
No.
And I don't know that I can't blame them at all.
Yeah. But we also have to be realistic, too. Like you said, it's rivalry week. So if there's ever a time that throw records all out the door, nothing really matters when it comes to that, it's a rivalry game. So. Yeah. Who knows? This may come down to one of those Indiana only squeaks out maybe by a win, or maybe Purdue just absolutely blows them out. Who knows?
Happy holidays to me if that does happen.
I already say you'll be one happy Purdue fan. That'll be That's one bright spot of your season.
Yeah, that would be hey, we won the bucket. That doesn't matter then.
So we
went 2-9, but we retained the bucket.
And you beat two teams in Indiana. You beat Indiana State and
Indiana
IU.
And Indiana State, yes. But so yeah, I hope they do something to show the pride for Purdue, of their college. They're obviously not going anywhere after this week. This week is over. They're done.
Right.
They're ending their season, but that's the hope. So it's going to be a fun afternoon today watching a couple of football games. Well, I'll get to see one because, or at least to pay attention to one. The other one will be while I'm broadcasting the other one, or my high school game. But then a nice slate, not any really huge standout games, but a nice slate of games in the conference that'll be interesting to watch. It would be lovely to see maybe Auburn win the Iron Bowl, just to put that, no, Alabama's not going to the playoff.
It'd be so sweet.
You would still, if Nick Saban were the coach and they had 4 losses, I don't think he'd be able to handle it. He'd probably resign on the podium. But also he would still try to lobby for the Tide to make it to the playoff. We got 4 quality losses.
Oh, we have 4 quality losses. No, you don't.
No, you got
3 really bad losses. You got 1 quote unquote quality loss. You got 3 really bad.
So next week, we didn't get to any basketball this week, Tony, but there's so much football going on that I think probably next week we'll be able to dip our toe or two into the basketball realm and kind of dive into that and see what the basketball is doing as we get closer to just basketball season.
I know. It was funny. I have a buddy who is a Purdue fan, but he's also a Kentucky fan, and I feel like it's kind of like being an Ohio State and a Michigan fan. I feel like that's just like fire and fire that can't be
if
together.
It was IU in Kentucky, then I'd be like, yeah, that's kind of an Ohio State Michigan. I would say it's like, let's see, a Purdue and Kentucky fan would be like, being an IU and Illinois fan, or something like to where like Purdue absolutely hates. Or how about this? A Purdue or being an IU UCLA fan.
Ah, there you go.
Like there's no real correlation between the two teams that he likes.
Right.
But it's Purdue hates one and doesn't hate the other one, but
yeah. But I told him, because he's given up on college football essentially because of being a Purdue and a Kentucky fan. But I was like, hey, it's not really college basketball season until basically your college football team is out of it at the end of this week, because
I've been in conference. I've been in basketball season for like 3 months then.
True. So it is getting close though.
Absolutely. So, all right. So that wraps up this episode. This episode of Big Talk. Tony, why don't you tell everybody how they can find us?
Find us on Facebook at Big Talk. That's B1G Talk. Not all Big Talk. Not same. Good people, but not same. Remember when you spell Big Talk, it's B1G, not BIG. B1G Talk. And you can find us on Instagram, X, and TikToks at B1G_talk. Same thing, Big Talk, just with a 1 instead of an I _talk. You can find us every week on the All Sports All Plays network that you can get on any app, be it Apple or Android. And then Sam is also nice enough, even today on Black Friday, as he's about to go do a high school football game. So close. We're getting step by step, baby steps. Yep. He will post it later on Lounge Media Group and anywhere you get your podcasts.
Yes, sir. So another one in the books. Tony, have a wonderful weekend. I know you said that you probably have a meal with family. So happy Thanksgiving. Enjoy your weekend. Enjoy some football. And enjoy your family. Everybody else, same thing. Happy Thanksgiving. Hopefully you've been able to catch some time to be able to rest and celebrate with loved ones. And we appreciate you coming in today. For Tony Hollinsworth, I'm Sam Sprunger. This has been Big Talk College Sports with a Midwest perspective, blue collar and blue blood. We'll see you next time.